Friday, looking ahead to a fantastic weekend of football. It is a weekend, by the way, where all the hits are hits. Unlike last weekend, when the televised games were somewhat of a nightmare, this weekend, every single one of them is absolutely splendid. But of course, the biggest one, and the game I would argue, which is the game with the most significance riding on it so far this season, takes place at the Emirates-Arnold versus Liverpool on Sunday at 4:30. We're going to be talking about that. I've got with me Lizzi Doyle, Adam Smith, and Belinder Bhati. We're going to chat a little bit about the Rangers game. We're going to talk about Jurgen Klopp's press conference today and the idea that it's been 7 years of Jurgen Klopp now. 7 years. If you are listening to this as a podcast, Dorothea Richtoff from Sober Spirit of Shankly joins John Gibbons to have a chat halfway through. But there's so much to get through, both in terms of the Rangers game, the results, and the way in which the managers discussed that today, and other bits and pieces that we will start off talking about Rangers. And in the press conference, Lizzie, he says what we could all see, that effectively Darwin was in the game. He was involved. His touch was there. And as the manager said, he kept getting chances, and he feels like there will be more to come from Darwin. We all expect there to be more to come. And my God, we paid all that money. We'd hope that there's more to come. But it's interesting he picks him, and it's interesting the way in which he talks about him. It's interesting the way in which he backs him to the hilt. And I thought he was good against Rangers. I was surprised when people were acting like there was meant to be something else there. I thought he was constantly involved and was a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I thought he was really good to watch. I think his movement for me was the big thing with Rangers. And I think, especially in that system, the 4-2-3-1, I felt like it was finally starting to highlight him and sort of like what he was good at, and gave us a little bit of a different option that I think we've absolutely not had the last few games. I mean, this might tie back into a wider point, but for me, and especially in the Rangers game, when we did change to more of a flat 4-3-3, and when we've been playing the 4-3-3 the last few games, is where I think we've actually fell down. So if we're now creating a system which can highlight and bring out the best in Nunez, then it can only be a good thing. And do you know what's done my head in is that, like, I think people were talking about him in the build-up, and maybe rightfully so, because we haven't had a lot of evidence, but just talking about him as if he's just got a big head. You know, he's just useful for his lovely head. And it's like, well, no, we actually got to see the fact that he can move and he can get into spaces and get into, you know, different spaces that maybe others might not have tried to exploit. And I think what everyone just needs to get used to is that it's a different way of playing, and he is a different player than what we're used to, and that's all right. It's lovely to have options. The lad's not going to be absolutely flying and be, I don't know what people expected him to be, maybe because with Mane going, did they expect, I really don't know. But I think we all just need to be a bit open and patient and look at that Rangers game, I think, which come at the perfect time, and probably for Nunez as well. And just take positives from it. Like, obviously we can critique. That's what we do as fans. And, you know, not everyone's perfect, but that was a good performance. And the fact that the manager's highlighting it, I think is only a good thing.
Only a good thing, Belinda. I agree, and I think it suggests that, you know, he's got what you from the footballer, what he thought he would get. The other thing that struck me about Nunez was how often he was taking chances early, how lively he was in that regard. He wants to take the shot early. He wants to take the shot on, and I thought it was a performance just with a slab of real promise writ through it, which I think we could have done with seeing. Whether or not it's some sort of ongoing tactical shift is a little bit different, but I think it's what we could have done with seeing, and we got to see it.
Yeah, I think as well, like, it's not so much just the 4-3-3 and changing that slightly, but also the positions that Nunez was getting into, in the sense that when we were playing with the 4-3-3 and Nunez was coming on for 10, 20 minutes, he was constantly picking up the ball on the wings, and in positions where he can't really do what he's good at, and that's get shots away on goal, and then hopefully one day that leads to goals. So I think when we played with this kind of two up top in a way, and he had Jota as the one who could drop in slightly deeper and feed off of him, it just meant he had more responsibility through the middle of the pitch, and that could therefore mean he got into the better positions that we were talking about. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this kind of goes, because, you know, it feels very different to be playing Rangers at home than the team top of the league away. So I don't know how Klopp sticks or twists with that midfield, in the sense that just going with two in midfield, but it's exciting, and this is what we wanted in the summer when we were saying, "Oh, signing Nunez is exciting because it's different." This is what we meant. We knew there could be an evolution on the cards in terms of how we play now. So yeah, let's see how this goes.
It's striking to me, Adam, that a lot of what he's been used so far when he's appeared in games, and even when he starts from the outset against Palace, there's a lot of Liverpool expecting him to play with his back to goal. For me, you look at the footballer that he is, and you look at the reality of where Liverpool's forwards have been, with the slight exception of Jota and arguably early periods of the career of Mane and Salah. Liverpool's footballers, the three who line up in attack, they tend to play a lot of football with their back to goal. Mane was great at it second half of last season, but he offers you that from left wing. Salah does loads of stuff where he ends up back to goal. Firmino lives his life back to goal. We've got a fella here who's not that player, and I think that's one of the things that will take a bit of getting used to. He doesn't want it with his back to goal. He wants it to run onto all the time. He doesn't care where he runs onto it. He'll run onto it right wing, he'll run onto it left wing, he'll run onto it in the channels, and he'll run on it straight on goal. But that's where he wants it. He wants the ball ahead of him as much as possible, despite the fact that he's 6'3" and has got wonderful Andy Carrollish vibes in terms of his sheer level of physical attraction. In there, but he's not that footballer who wants it back to goal.
No, he's not. I think he can do it a little bit. I think it's not something that
I think we'll develop it with him, Adam. That's the point over time. But I think right now the footballer he is wants this here.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that I think part of the problem is that it felt like we were starting to make changes to how we played to kind of accommodate him and that way of playing in a more, as you say, running onto things rather than back to goal kind of way without him in the team, which I think didn't help what's gone on, so far this season, where we haven't looked quite right. I think part of that is because we were sort of playing in a system that was for somebody that wanted to run onto the balls, but the fellow who wants to run onto the balls wasn't there. So instead you had, we'd play Firmino, for example, who, as you say, is the most back-to-goal player that I think the club's maybe ever had. Yeah, I mean, which he makes sort of even more of a point of by all the no-look goals that he scored over the career of his, if he wants to be like, I never want to look forward. Don't make me do that shit. So I think so with trying to accommodate Nunez in amongst all that has just kind of thrown everything slightly out of whack with him not actually being there. And it's why I completely agree with Belinder. I don't know quite what we're going to do this weekend, but one thing I really want to do is I want to see him play, because I really feel like getting him on the pitch consistently is going to start to help everybody just understand what it is we're trying to do.
Moving on to that then, Adam, I mean, we'll do the end first. We'll come back and discuss our team. I want him to pick Jota and Nunez against Arsenal, and I want him to play Jota off the left, have him interchange with Nunez and Salah Salah off the right. I think he will go back to 4-3-3, and part of I feel as though that could discombobulate Arsenal, because I think the one thing they don't want is a lad who's 6'3", absolutely piling around the top end of the pitch, sprinting onto everything and looking for stuff to go direct, and that's what I think he gives us a big offer of this weekend, along with the way in which Arsenal play.
Definitely. I think there's always that thing. I want to say it was Sean Rogers who said it on the review loads of times of, what do the opposition not want you to do? Because that's what you should do. And that is very much, they don't want him to play, basically, I think is the short answer. So I think you play him and you find a way to, as you say, get him running onto things. My only concern about making what we did at the weekend a kind of regular occurrence or a variation of that is how few changes it gives us. When you start with all of them, it means you can't bring any of them on, and so the change that you get from it is a duller version of things like that. That almost wants to be there. Okay, we've got 20 to go. That's
why I'd like Diaz off the bench on this one. I think Diaz off the bench is the thing that grabs me, in the idea that and he could come on in any of the if you play three up front, he can come on in any of the three positions and make it enormously different immediately.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But then, so I do completely agree. But at the same time, I find myself going, but I want to watch him play though, because he's dead good. So it's
that's a good thing.
It's really tricky, isn't it? I think that we will go with something like that to give ourselves options. That was the only thing I thought when I saw the lineup of Rangers was, if for some reason we struggle, the way that we change it is to make ourselves more boring, which is never good.
We will come back around and talk about Arsenal setup with Nunez at the centre of it, and questions around the shape as well. Other thing that we had in this one, Belinder, the game against Rangers, was Trent deeper. which I think is actually the most marked difference from what you've seen so far from Liverpool. Elliott at times has been playing like an attacker when it's been written down as 4-3-3, but he's been pretty close to making it look like 4-2-4 himself. I've felt at times, Elliott. Jota, obviously, because the nature of the footballer means you can't ignore the fact that it is an attacker in that position. But for me, what was interesting was Trent Alexander-Arnold was, seemed pretty close to his two centre-backs over the course of the game. He wasn't rampaging around the back of anyone in front of him. Liverpool attacked with 5, Shimikas being 1, and then the front 4. And it was Trent Alexander-Arnold playmaking from deep rather than attacking from deep, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I think we needed that. He needed that, maybe just a bit of a reset, a bit of a chance to just play the game, keep it simple, go back to just worrying about, the defensive sort of side of things, but then as well, obviously trying to make the most of the playmaking ability he has, but at the same time not being hell-bent on every time you get the ball, you have to make something, you have to play the perfect pass, and you have to bomb up the pitch. You've got to make everything sort of come through Trent. It was less of that. It was more like can the midfielders as well keep the ball and play some balls over the top without Fabinho playing Thiago and Henderson, two more, I would say, forward-minded midfielders, because there's that one that Henderson plays over the top to Nunez, and that's probably the best way you feed Nunez with those types of passes through the line. So yeah, it was good for Trent, I think, to have that reset and refocus. Again, I don't know how that changes. Again, I think that's part of playing with the two midfield. You can't afford to throw everybody forward in that sense. So I wonder now how that changes again on the weekend, because Trent is arguably one of our game-changing players at times when he's on form.
We'll see how it changes at the weekend, Lizzie. The other thing about this is obviously in no time at all after the weekend's game's finished, they go back round to Rangers again. Now, the manager was at pains to say it'll be different at Ibrox, and it will be different at Ibrox. We know that, we know what it is to have a big night and a big atmosphere that gets up and gets on top of a group of players. That said, it won't be 11 new Rangers players who are well better than that crew. And I think that's, in the back of Liverpool's minds, they've got to be, looking at that one as an opportunity for 3 points. No matter what the crowd does, Liverpool should be beating that Rangers side in the return fixture.
Yeah, it was clear as day how much better we are than them, and I think we knew that, but it was just so evident in every area, weren't it? I mean, you might see the odd few changes. That Cholak will probably start, I imagine, and he's a bit of a handful. I was looking at his stats the other week for work, and he for them he's an absolute godsend. He scored something like 8 and 8, I think. But for me, he was the only one that really, when he come on, seemed to put himself about him. Again, I listened to the sort of Scottish side of things, because naturally, all the media was around how big of an occasion this is and this, that and the other. It was interesting to hear how disappointed Rangers were actually within their performance. So they expected to see so much more, and they were deeply disappointed by their performance at Anfield. And that says to me that they're going to be bang up for it. I mean, we know they're going to be bang up for it at Ibrox, but there seems to be this added thing of they didn't show up at all, and they haven't played anywhere near like they have done this season, or even say last season, but obviously they lost a good couple of players after that Europa League run. So we know for a fact what they're going to be offering, but at the end of the day, weirdly, that Ajax result, the Napoli Ajax result, has probably helped us here, and Liverpool need to grab that. They need to grab this one now, because if we get 3 points, that puts us on 9, meaning we probably only need a point from Ajax or Napoli. Now that is a great position to be in if we're okay with not winning the group. It's a must win at the end of the day, and I'd like to think I think we'll have more than enough to get it over the line. Expect a big atmosphere, but one goal in the first 10-15 minutes just one goal, and if it's 0-0, one goal shuts them up, and it'll be sound.
Changes everything. Other thing that's interesting is the manager, 7 years since he arrived, tomorrow, since he arrived at Anfield. Adam, listening to him today in the context of that, I was sort of struck by how fresh he still manages to sound, and his general demeanour. Listen, we've been pretty rubbish recently, you know what I mean? And we've talked about it a lot. But what's striking to me is his general demeanour, whilst the results haven't been coming, feels so different to the way it was during the COVID season. And I think part of his freshness is that he puts himself into situations. He's got quite a. He's not really defences up, or if he is, they're very clever defences. The importance of his own sort of emotion and his collectivity in his worldview, not just football, I think remains a massive part of his appeal. And I was enjoying listening to him today, and I just thought, wow, we've been listening to this fella for 7 years, and at least where I'm concerned, the shtick hasn't gone stale yet.
And I think emotion is a word you use there, and it's just so important to him as a person and as a manager and everything that comes with that. And obviously, when you reference the COVID season, there were no supporters, so we couldn't feed off the emotion of other people. He lost one of his parents, so he had his own emotional turmoil going on in amongst all that. There was so much going on then. The whole world situation, like we didn't have I think everyone's sort of forgotten now just how mad it was, where we had no clue whether we'd ever get back into the ground. Like it felt like we would, and we were all like, oh, of course we will at some point. But there was still that bit where you're like, but it might not be the same. Like there might be, every other seat might be sold, or we just didn't know what was going to happen. And he had all that as well as the kind of figurehead of a football club that was built on passion, emotion, and the relationship with the supporters. So that kind of, he was drained. He was so drained then. And in many ways, we're going through, or we've been through similar kind of things in terms of on the pitch stuff, where it feels like he just almost hasn't been able to figure out what's going wrong. Like it felt like he couldn't figure out quite what was going wrong in the COVID season. And he's had a similar kind of thing now, except in that he was able to go, well, we've lost all our defenders. Like we're playing, supporters at centre back. So that was a reason. Whereas now he's like, yeah, all right, the midfield's not perfect, but it's not like we're not doing the same sort of thing there. What's going wrong? And I think almost him trying to figure out that is what's given him the passion, what's given him that thing to reignite him, of that I need to be the person to figure this out. What's going wrong with Trent? Well, let's just go back to basics. I was honestly so pleased on Tuesday night, seeing how we've just gone back to basics, and that every time I looked up, Trent was playing as an actual defender, not some hybrid attacking winger striker weirdness that he'd been doing previously. I was so pleased with it, with how dull it was. I was so, like, dullest 2-0 you've ever seen. I was delighted by it, because that's what I felt we needed to do, was get back to basics. And he's done that, and that's him figuring it out and being like fresh and kind of going, right, we'll go back to basics. But how do we go back to basics while still being really exciting, in terms of our attacking and all that sort of stuff? So yeah, he's still there because he's still got so much to sort of prove, I think, like with himself, hasn't he?
Well, I think I think all the way through the season, listening to him in these press conferences, Belinda, not just the one today, but repeatedly, the way in which he's spoken about the idea of it being challenged, that he wants a challenge, that he wanted to be challenging, that, we don't like the results, but this is where it gets interesting, is almost the way in which he framed it a couple of times. And again, that just feels so different to when there was that bad patch that I mentioned in that season. But also to what you hear from a lot of managers. Managers tend not to want to play those particular cards, but a real sort of, well, I quite like it when it gets hard, is one of the things that he manages to pull together.
Yeah, I guess that's probably why he's arguably the best manager in the world, right? To be able to be in that situation where it feels like the walls are closing in and the pressure is building, and it can become so suffocating. Even as a fan, like sometimes when we're in these spells, it's so hard to keep kind of having to think about it and think about the problems and think about how to fix it. But he just manages to remain, because he kind of has to, it's his job, but he manages to remain like the one person who can keep calm and keep level headed and know that there will be the light at the end. And we saw it in that COVID season. We managed to salvage the season and have a fantastic end to it, which then set us up for what was a good next season, put us in good form for that. So I don't think it's ever a doubt that he's not the one who could pull us out of this rut. It's just now about, when is he going to pull us out of this rut?
It's on the idea of the rut, 7 years in, that's a long time, Lizzie, and I think that it's sort of, in a way, it leads us back to a chat about the shape, whether or not he wants to make that difference or has been in the process of making that difference. He's committed to one for much of those 7 years. That's been the one he's had his success with. But 7 years is, it's an age. Today, he just casually mentions chatting to Martin Odegaard's parents when Martin Odegaard was 15, because he's just been around. You think about how young he is when he gets the Mainz job. 7 years there, 7 years at Dortmund, and now it's been 7 years here. That's a long time to be doing what he's doing within football. And yet, he's still relatively young, and he's still got a real level of vibrancy about it as well.
Yeah, it's mad that he's been knocking about that long, isn't it? And do you know what? Even in modern day football now, I don't know of many managers who stay past 3-4 years, you'd say. So like in the Premier League now, is he the longest serving in the Premier League? It must be, mustn't he? Because he was second after Deitch, if I'm right.
He's the second oldest in the Premier League.
I mean, that's mad. That's mad.
Behind Moyes.
He doesn't feel like me dad. And I feel like that's an indicator of how old someone is, and Klopp doesn't feel like me dad. Do you know what I mean?
There we are.
Whereas Moyes could be me dad, but I'd be gutted about it. Stuck it in. So no, but this idea, it sounds a bit like, when people say you've got to trust in him, you do. Like, the fella's been around the block. Look at what he's delivered in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, if you think about how long it's taken us to win one league, and then he steps in and does it within, however many years, was it 5 years? Champions League and under his belt in 2 finals. And I think what Jurgen brings to us is that my level of disappointment now has gone from rock bottom with Roy, a little bit higher with Rodgers, up to about my rock bottom is top 4. That's what it feels to be. And it feels like that I'm never going to be more gutted about anything else other than maybe finishing 4th. And that is a bloody good position to be in as a football club. Now, when you set a bar as high as we have, and as high as Jurgen has, in competing with Man City and going toe-to-toe year after year, it's hard not to feel like that it's a bit of a failure, I think, sometimes. But you've got to be realistic. You've got to look at what you're competing against year on year. And this year they do look unstoppable. They've got a fella who's made as a robot, and there's a petition against them. So you've got to look at the relativeness of all of it. And if the fact that my mindset is where I could be shot down for saying this, is that we just need to make sure we finish top 4. Am I worried about finishing top 4? I'm not. And that is a position I think we haven't been in as Liverpool fans pre-2015 for a long, long time. So just cherish it, the fact that you're probably going to have Champions League football pretty much every year while he's here. And that brings in some of the most exciting players who want to play for him, the likes of TAW and all that. Like, he's just brought so much, and he'll continue to bring so much because of who he is.
Absolutely. Absolutely fantastic. Fantastic that he's been here for as long as he has. We'll chat more about his shape and about the options that are open to him. If you are listening to this as a podcast, we will be back in a couple of minutes after you've heard John Gibbons talk to Dorothea Richthoff. That is coming right now. 3, 2, 1. And now we are back. It is Neil Atkinson with Lizzi Doyle, with Adam Smith, and with Belinder Bhati to talk further about this game that is coming up against Arsenal. Belinder, I said at the start, I think it is the most significant football match of the season so far. I mean, all clubs, not just Liverpool as well. I think, it's a massive, massive, massive test for Arsenal after they managed to fail one of them away at Old Trafford, pass another one at home against Tottenham Hotspur. They now find themselves with, any win would feel like a statement win from their point of view, and a win where they play well would do so even more. But ultimately, from our point of view, at some point, we're going to... The really weird thing about the league table, for me, Belinda, is ultimately that we've only lost 1. I think we're all knocking around feeling like we've lost 6. We've only lost 1. But the point is that there's 4 draws in there off 7 games, and draws can kill you if you want to be hunting down Manchester City. So, it seems as though Liverpool have got to find some degree of themselves and get something from the Emirates. I'm confident if Liverpool play well before we get into the ins and outs that they can get something from the Emirates, but you can't have Arsenal away and City at home and draw them both. A draw in each feels right now like it'd be a good result, but Liverpool couldn't afford at this stage to draw them both.
I think as well why some of those draws or felt like losses, but more some of the wins didn't feel the same, was because one was like a 90-something minute winner and the other was a 9-0. So there were just such anomalies of wins as well. Like Adam said, we had that nice 2-0 dull. That's what we want. Normalize those again. Let's bring those back. So yeah, I think there's that. But I think you're able to now frame this part of the season, and the manager is now able to frame this part of the season as a chance to really start our season and bounce back and right the wrongs of what's been. Because if you now go to Emirates and then play City and get 2 wins, all of a sudden our season is, can have a real kind of turnaround. And so in terms of getting the players up and the motivation, and I think one of the reasons why we were falling short at the start of the season was sort of the press and our intensity not being there. I think you've got a real cause there to say, look, we've got a reason now to fight, go out and leave everything on the pitch in the next 290 minutes in the league, and then the Rangers one in between. And and go and start from now. Like maybe time will tell how we end the season in terms of the title race and where we'll be in that conversation. But don't worry about that now. Just worry about the present and just going out the next 2 games, because like I said, it's a chance to really restart, and then all of a sudden, we can kick on.
It's within there in the press conference, Adam. There's a mild sort of contradiction, and I think it does filter into the question around performance in an interesting way. You know, on the one hand, he talks about unpredictability, and then on the other, he enters into this long digression, which I agree with, by the way, that where he says Liverpool haven't been worked out recently, that we were worked out ages ago, but sides couldn't do anything about it, and that's where you're a bit like, so you want us to be more unpredictable on the one hand, but on the other hand, you're saying don't worry about the worked out thing. We just need to be better at what it is we're doing. And it sort of throws up the question as to what he actually means when he discusses unpredictability. And then within that as well, he's got a little thing where he's discussing sides changing the way they approach when they face us. And that comes up in Linders' book over and over again. I think it has featured this season, sides doing things differently for the game against Liverpool. I think that's something that they're onto. But this, what does he mean and what does he want when he talks about unpredictability versus him saying, but if we do what we should do really, really well, then we should also get results, is just an interesting little dichotomy he's placed in there.
Yeah, it is. I think for me, one of the things that I was a bit annoyed about, for want of a better phrase, with the manager this season was his lack of pragmatism. I think there were many games where I was looking at it thinking, stop asking them to do what they always used to do, because they're not doing it at the moment. So I think he's absolutely right that teams figured us out ages ago, but couldn't do anything about it because of how well we played. But we weren't playing well this season. So that those two things all of a sudden meant that we were finding ourselves in trouble, because teams were doing what they'd done, which, as you say, they were changing how they play to kind of cope with what we do, which is what they've done in the past, but previously it hasn't worked because we just played so well. Whereas this season, we aren't playing well, so it's been working. And I've kind of thought, stop asking players to do that we're not pressing. Like, we just haven't been pressing in the same kind of way that we were when it's worked in the past. So stop setting teams up to be, press merchants, because it's just when the press doesn't work, all of a sudden you're really exposed, and we've been really exposed time and again. And one of the big things, just to go back to it slightly, one of the big things in that Napoli game was that he did say, right, we're going to be pragmatic, and we're going to say to Trent, just be a right back. Just be a right back. That's all you need to do this game. Just be a right back. And we'll put 2 defensive midfielders in there and ask them to basically be defensive midfielders, not be players who've got to play every role under the sun, in the middle of the park. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a bit of a contradiction, but at the same time, I think he's right in so much as right now, what we used to do that teams had figured out but couldn't do anything about isn't working. So if we can be less predictable, it means that even if they try to do something, it won't necessarily work for them, because we'll be better at causing them problems with things that they weren't expecting.
It's within this then, the other thing that we've got to deal with on Sunday, Lizzie, for me, going to their place, and I'd rather have this fixture right now be away than home in one sense. But in another sense, this Arsenal side, and I mean that this Arsenal football club, is enjoying itself. And I think that that's one of the things that's underpinned this. They've been enjoying themselves all year. They don't qualify for the Champions League last year when they probably should. It doesn't lead to supporters turning on Arteta. In fact, the opposite happens. It feels like club, supporters, Arteta himself, everyone doubles down. Everyone commits to it even more. And that, to me, is something that makes a football club dangerous. When it feels as though everyone's aligned, it makes a football club dangerous. And that, I think, is almost the first thing Liverpool have got to deal with on Sundays. They've got to give Arsenal absolutely no encouragement whatsoever, because they already feel inherently encouraged because of everything that's gone on for the last 12, 18 months.
Yeah, the confidence sky high, and rightfully so, by the way. And I mean, Arsenal isn't the loudest ground in the Premier League, but I think it will be quite right to sort of silence them fairly quickly, and the team themselves, in whatever way that is. And I'm not saying go full, Sam Allardyce tactics, not like that, but just play a little bit dirty here and sort of upset the rhythm a little bit, because like you said, they are playing fantastic football. And believe me, I think Alistair just mentioned it in the comments, as soon as Adam was saying it, all that was going through my mind is Martinelli versus Trent. I mean, that lad is on form. I mean, they're all on form. Jesus, really on foot. But Martinelli versus Trent is one that everyone's going to be watching, and Trent is going to have all eyes on him because Martinelli's a great little player, and I think he has a really good game against him last season, didn't he? And that for me is like a key battle where if we can quieten the likes of him down quite early, where Trent will know that they'll be targeting him there. They know for the fact they will. Jurgen will. If we can sort of quieten that down and dampen that down, we might put ourselves in a good position. And I think the panic for me, what I need to see, not me, like, do you know what I mean? But I mean, I feel like what we all need to see is not to concede first for once. Like, it's a really bloody big deal because I'm sick to death of conceding first. What is it, like 9 out of 11 or something huge?
I think it's four. I think we've conceded first in 462 of the last 464 games.
It's a joke.
So the stats say. I'm not a numbers guy.
But you know what? Like, last season that wouldn't have bothered me, but this season it's clearly having an effect. I think because they're into a little bit of a rhythm now with it. I think where it's a bit of panic stations, and like we say, we see the press drop off and this, that, and the other. They need to just keep calm. Like I say, nullify them for a bit. Keep the likes of Martinelli quiet. Keep Jesus quiet. And just go about the business and just try not to concede that first goal and not concede it early, because I think that will really get Liverpool on the back foot. I'm not trying to do them down. I think we are in a much better position than maybe we would have been a week or two ago. And they need to take what they've sort of learned in the Rangers game really into this game. And I think don't underestimate Arsenal. Like, we've had a lot of joy there every season, but bloody hell, this is the one time we can't underestimate them.
I don't think anyone will be underestimating them, Belinder, from a Liverpool point of view. And that's another reason why I don't think this fixture's bad right now. You know, I think if they can get through it, get through the first half intact, then I think that from there, you know, not dissimilar to last season's game, they're playing well. When we go there last February, it was a night game. The crowd was up then. First half's tough, but Liverpool sort of hang on in there, and then second half they grab the game a little bit. But the flip side is sort of how good we think they are. You know, Saliba, Ødegaard, Jesus, these are excellent players. It's a good age through the squad. I feel a bit like we're almost watching Arsenal's warm-up act here this season. I don't think Arsenal will challenge City this season. I think there's a chance that if we don't, no one does. So the Premier League should all be all in on the idea of us getting 6 points from the next two. Because if we don't, I don't think anyone else is equipped to right now to put in a very, very big season. Arsenal are the closest. It looks like they could prove me wrong. But my point here is that if it's not now, it is next season, I think, for this Arsenal side, because I think they are coming to the boil nicely.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is underestimating this Arsenal side. Like I said, one loss this season, I believe, and it was against United. And I think the thing, though, for me is it's always like you say that the age of their squad is good, and it is in terms of the future, but in terms of where they're at right now, I still feel like they are, I don't want to say naive, but they're still going to have that thing where they've got players like Ramsdale in, and players who have come out before and like publicly said, oh yeah, playing against Jota is so difficult because he always gets like one up on me. I don't think Ben White's ever said it, but I know Ramsdale's definitely said it in interviews, and it's like there's still that element there where we've got those players who they will be looking at and will be scared of. Thiago in midfield, another player who you can bet, like so many players in the league see him and are in awe of him. If Van Dijk isn't making mistakes, Van Dijk's another one that Jesus would have played against. I think he scored against Van Dijk before, but he will know what his strengths are, and he will know this. Alisson behind him, best keeper in the league, arguably one of the best players in the league this season so far. So, you know, we've still got that there. It's just about they need to like believe it as well, like, because I think the Arsenal will be going into it same thing, thinking let's not think Liverpool are rubbish, because they won't be. They're professionals.
The manager talks them up quite nicely today. You know, Adam, he's on top of them and where they are. Ultimately, I think that this is, as I'll say it again, I think the point about this is Liverpool know exactly what it is they're getting. You know, there's no hiding places here. We played most of these players before. We played them all before, but played most of them playing for Arsenal before. We got to see how good they were last season when we faced them. We've got to see. They've got the results on the board. There's nothing wrong with big games, I think, at a time when you're a bit wobbly, because it ultimately is you either stiffen your sinews and deal with the fact that it's a big game, or you don't, and you learn a thing or two from it. And I'm looking forward to sinews being stiffened from a Liverpool point of view here against Arsenal. It's win your battles and then win the game.
Yeah, I think you said before about it being the biggest games so far this season, and I think that's absolutely right. I think it's right across the league, but I think it's very, very much correct as far as Liverpool are concerned, because it being the prelude to the Manchester City game is, if we can get away from the Emirates with something, hopefully with 3 points, it gives them a little bit of confidence headed into City. Flip side, if we can't, I think there'll be a lot of worry and concern about City within the squad. I mean, not just supporters, because I think right now, I think we're just on the precipice of being able to say we can get our season back on track. I think if we lose to Arsenal, we kind of fall off that precipice, and not in a good way. And that's my worry. But at the same time, I do think that I agree with everything that's been said. I agree with what Belinda said about Arsenal. And I think my thing is, they sort of showed last season that they've still got a weak mentality. The fact they didn't get into the Champions League is pathetic, for want of a better phrase. If that was us, I would have been furious, because they were in the driver's seat pretty much every single game until they weren't. And for them not to get top four, let's say Channel 4 for some reason, like they were bidding for it, for them not to get top four from that position is a real, I think it's maybe something that will be in the back of players' heads. So if we do, for example, go ahead early, I think there will be a thing in Arsenal, both supporters and the players, of kind of going, we lost to United and they're a bit shit, and now we're playing these and they've gone one up against us, and last season we didn't win loads of games when we should have. And but all those things that come to the fore when you're a little bit, whatever the phrase, imposter syndrome kind of thing. And that's what I think that's what Arsenal need to get over if they ever are going to challenge us or City. And I think we've got a really good opportunity to smack them back down.
I don't think they'll be worried about that. Personally, I think they've almost got a free pass at this one, in that the top of the league, they're absolutely flying. They're coming up against Liverpool, who they've always seen as a hard team. I personally don't think that will be a factor. I do think we can rattle them, and I don't know if any of you watched the Arsenal Spurs game. There was plenty of opportunities, I thought, where when I was watching, I was thinking, like, and I know Spurs are, what are they, third in the league are they at the moment? I still think that we're a better team than Spurs, and I look at like the talent that we've got and our players, and I look at sort of how they were slicing through. Like Richarlison was getting loads of joy. Like, we've got trickier players than Richarlison, and there are options, and there are places for us to exploit. I just don't think. I think like Arsenal won't be absolutely. I don't think the confidence will be shot if they get beat or whatever today, or they go down 1-0. We need to rattle them, yeah. But I think that's just one thing to be wary about, because they are flying so high. And I think they do look different to last season. But that's just my opinion.
No, I think that's why genuinely it is all about Liverpool have got to get through the first 45 minutes unscathed. I think it's the defining factor of the game. It's what are we doing that gets us to 45, gets us to half time, and then. I think the truth of the matter is actually halfway between you and Adam. I think at the minute they do look different, but I think that there comes a point when old insecurities begin to sort of settle in. If you aren't there, listen, if they start fast, crowds up, and they're 1-0 up on 15 minutes, those insecurities aren't going anywhere. And
exactly.
why I'm looking forward to this game, Belinda, is I think something we've struggled with this season, and I think it's a difficult one for the manager to talk about, because it's something that I don't think Liverpool want to acknowledge. But I think one of the things we found hard is the feeling that when the game kicks off, we're 1-0 down. Because every game we feel as though we've got to win. I think we've struggled a little bit under the yoke of that this season. I know we go and get the goal to make it 3-2 against Brighton pretty quick, but I thought it was really telling that they go 2-2 against Brighton. There's people getting the ball out the net, like there's 5 to go. It was 55 minutes. There was quite literally going to be, there was going to be 40 minutes more football at that point. But in Liverpool's heads, we're at home to Brighton. We've got to win. We cannot conceive of losing. So 3-2 just feels like 1-1 when we go 3-2. And this is, I think the good thing about playing Arsenal in this game is it kicks off 0-0 and it's actually 0-0. It's just 0-0, and it doesn't have to be anything else. And 0-0's fine on 45. Not this idea that I think Liverpool have got themselves into every time they play a game of football. 0-0 isn't fine at half time. It is in most games, but it certainly is in this one coming up against Arsenal. 0-0 at half time is absolutely fine.
Yeah, you mentioned like old insecurities for Arsenal, but equally that can play in for us as well, because I guess one of the reasons as well that we haven't really factored in of as why we've started this season so slowly is probably the hangover from last season to go all the way in all 4 competitions, and then in the last 2 games be so close to both the big 2 trophies and not get any of them. You know, I don't even know what the psychological effect of that is on the professional players, because as a fan, it was a lot to go through. So yeah, I guess they're still hangover for that, and having to be perfectionist for so long again in that second half of last season, and it's still failing is probably what plays into the mentality you were saying that we have. So yeah, if someone can remind them, you know, 0-0, keep reminding them maybe every 10 minutes, keep it 0-0, keep it 0, hang in there. Yeah, we might be all right. But yeah, I was just thinking like again about the whole end of last season, and I thought it was so interesting over the summer as well. Like when we lost in Kiev, I felt like that summer after was so different to losing in Paris now, and it felt like no one really actually acknowledged that we'd lost the Champions League final. It was just kind of, well, it's gone now. We've matured. We've won it before. We'll try again next year. Whereas the Kiev one really felt like this was big, like a really big blow, but we can build on it. So yeah, I'm going off a tangent here, but this is talking about the effect of end of last season.
All right, then we get to the game itself, Adam. The manager mentions the injured players. He doesn't add anyone else to the list. There's bits and pieces knocking around that TAW isn't pictured in some stuff, but the manager doesn't mention that. So we'll go off what the manager says for now. But football managers don't always have to be completely forthcoming at all times. Jones feels like he may well be close to being able to be available for selection. Robertson feels like he may well be close to being available for selection. Question marks, well, not question marks. He rules out Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain pretty definitively. For me, there's interesting selection questions though everywhere, Adam. I have a feeling he's going to start Konate. It would not surprise me to see Konate start 1, 2, or 3 of the next 3 games. I would like to see him start Nunez with Jota off the left and not start Diaz. I don't know if I'll get that. There is the idea of what he might do with the shape. If he wants unpredictability, it's a team that I'm struggling to predict.
Yeah, I agree. And midfield still is sort of a questionable area, given we don't have loads of midfields to pick from. And I think if the rumours about Thiago turn out to be true, that becomes even more the case, doesn't it? Because he's lost another option there. There are question marks all over the pitch, actually, and I think the 2 that are pretty much 3, 4 that are nailed on: Alisson, Virgil, Trent, and Tsimikas are the ones that I think they're definitely going to be in there in one way or another.
Do you think Tsimikas will start?
I do, yeah.
I think he'll break his back to get Robertson on the pitch.
I just don't. To be honest, I thought that I'd seen him say that Robertson still wasn't quite right. I thought I'd seen.
He was very eager to tell you that he was running on the grass, but then he got a little bit vague.
Right. So, in that case, then, yeah, not even that's nailed on. In that case, I just saw somebody say Robertson will be gutted to miss Ibrox. So I think that's why I just thought he was definitely out. So, but anyway, whatever. Yeah, it adds to the what's going on. Salah, obviously, I think is pretty much nailed on. Other than that, there's loads of question marks everywhere, and that, as you say, that adds to the air of unpredictability. I do hope we see Nunez, and I do hope we see Jota, because Jota loves a goal against Arsenal, so that'd be really, really nice. So Lizzie's just said Robbo's out according to Klopp. So I say Lizzie's just said, like
managers are liars.
Nobody heard a voice.
I can confirm this weekend, everyone.
Managers are liars. We'll see.
Yeah, but anyway, look, it'll be what it'll be. But I want to see like I hosted AFQ football early this week, and somebody said, "Do you think we should just go all out heavy metal football again? Go back to that sort of thing?" And actually, I want to see soporific football. That's what I want us to go for. I want to just the dullest football we can muster. Kill Arsenal. kill the crowd, just kill it all dead, and then build from there. That's what I want to go for, because that will give us the confidence maybe to say we can beat City. Look what we did to them in the Community Shield, but we have to get back to basics first and foremost. So that's what I really want to see is defensive solidity, because that's what all of Klopp's best teams have been built on, is defensive solidity. So get that back first.
What do you think he'll pick, Lizzie? Do you think he moves the shape back to 3 in midfield? If he does, he's obviously got to leave one of the four attackers out. If he does, which one does he leave out? What does he do next to Virgil? What are you expecting?
I don't think Konate. I was convinced Konate. My idea, but I thought if we were going to see Konate this weekend, which I really wanted to, I thought we would have seen him maybe get some minutes against Rangers, and he didn't get one. So I think he has to go Matip. I think he needs to go with his best centre half, and that's Matip. What's clearly going to be Tsimikas and Trent, and that, weirdly, it's not the Trent that worries me. I think Tsimikas as well can have a bit of a question mark sometimes defensively, but fingers crossed. I think as much as I love the 4-2-3-1, I feel like he will do a 4-3-3, and I think he'll just keep that Henderson, Fabinho, Thiago. Obviously, Fabinho was rested, if you want to call it that, rather than dropped. I don't know. I think he probably needs Fabinho to play in this game. I think it will be. I don't think it'll be as wild as what we think. I don't think we see Nunez start personally. I think it might be a Diaz, Jota, Salah, a bit of a trusted front three. I don't know. It's really bloody hard to tell because we were so much better in that formation, but I don't know. I do feel like we need the cover with the fullbacks, and I think you get that by playing the extra midfielders, and feels like we've got our best midfield back, yet they probably do need a rocket up them. That is very true. But I think we do need that cover in midfield. We do need that extra. I do think we need the 3 maybe to help cover Tsimikas and Robertson. That's just my opinion. Whether he goes Jota, even Bobby, I don't know. I think Bobby's probably a sub, but I do think it'll be a 3 and probably a more trusted front 3 than it would be with a Nunez.
What do you think, Belinda, of what Lizzie's just said?
Yeah, I think I agree generally. I think if Konate is fit, it wouldn't surprise me if he drops him in, because he dropped him in last season at like Old Trafford and stuff. So if he was fit, I don't doubt it, but I don't know about his fitness and anything like that. I don't know where he's at with his recovery. So yeah, I guess Matip. And same with the front 3. Although I have like really bought into this whole like Jota, Nunez, Salah front 3 that you're talking about now. So much so that I want to like manifest it. So maybe if I would just keep talking about it, it might happen.
Yeah, there's something about. Firstly, I like Diaz as a sub, and I think giving us the option of that. But I also think there's a thing that Diaz does that I think can help opposition defenders, which he just gives them a really clear 1v1 challenge, and you can win or lose a 1v1 challenge, but that's what Diaz does. Whereas Jota's movement, the idea that you've got to worry about Jota, Liverpool have got the ball on the right hand side, and Nunez and Jota are able to both attack the ball, whether it's along the ground or in the air. It's just got something in it for me. That's not to say that I don't think Diaz is really good in the air. I just think ultimately having a wide player, I think, I like Diaz when he looks more like a number 9, but I think having a wide player who is a number 9 and also a number 9, I think, I feel there's a universe where if they all got enough games, all of Jota, Salah and Nunez would break 20. Whereas I don't know if that's quite the case for Diaz. And I think the other thing in this game we're going to need to be is ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. And that's what Tottenham weren't. Ironically, Conte's Tottenham were just completely lacking in ruthlessness. And I think that when we do get the opportunities to break on them, there isn't the room for the lads who takes it round 3 and then something just bobbles against them a little bit and it doesn't quite go for you, which is where Diaz is. And at times I feel like I'm being really harsh, but it's the old Napoleon thing that I'd quite like me generals to be lucky in this one. And Jota feels lucky and Diaz doesn't. As harsh as that is, that's the way I feel about it.
But also Jota makes his own luck in the sense that when Diaz gets the ball, he'll take on a defender, but then 3 times out of 5 he'll cut back. And I think if we've got loads of possession, then maybe we can afford that luxury of having that type of player on the wing. But Jota's going to get the ball, and his mindset is every time kick it on someone in the box or flick it on or get a shot away, and he's always going to have that mindset. So I guess when you're weighing up the risks, I'd go with Jota in that sense.
Okay, then. It'll be an interesting one. It'll be a fascinating one. Everything that you need on the Anfield Wrap afterwards. Video and audio and writing. Download the app to get hold of all of it. But it will be there afterwards, straight on the whistle against Arsenal. I know, part of the reason I know it'll be straight on the whistle, as close to the whistle as we possibly can, is to put another football match at 7 o'clock. So whatever it is we're doing it, there's a massive ticking clock in terms of, honestly, if this is one of them with 9 minutes injury time or something, I'm going to be livid. Oh, loads of VAR. Christ almighty. It's going to make it very, very difficult indeed. So we will be turning things around as quickly as humanly possible on Sunday after the final whistle goes. Listen, thank you very much indeed to Lizzi Doyle, to Adam Smith, and to Belinder Bhati. It's been an absolute pleasure, this tour live this week. Whatever you're doing, enjoy Sunday. I'll say it again, it's the biggest game of the season involving any team so far. Liverpool are in it, perhaps for the wrong reasons, but that's the hand we're dealt. That's the hand we'll play. A result would